Hey everybody, today we are going to be talking about Vital, and this is a killer synth. I've been using it a lot more in the past year or so, but mostly for sounds like sound design, effects, leads, things like that. I haven't been using it in the bass because I was never quite happy with the envelopes and the filter and just getting the kind of snappy sound that I wanted. And then I saw this video by Dash Glitch, how to make a perfect Psytrance bass with Vital, and came out like 2 weeks ago, I think. And so I'll put a link to that down here. And there was a couple tricks in here that I have employed myself and are working very well to get the sound. So I wanted to show you my take on what he's done and expand on it a bit with some other things in the chain after Vital to make it even better. So that's what we're going to do today, and let's jump on in. Okay, so the first thing is I've got Vital here. I'm working in Cubase, and I've got a Vital open. And so let me just quickly show you what Dash's sounds like, and then what mine sounds like, and then I'll walk you right through it. All right, so let's see.
Back in and let's check out what the mix of these two channels sounds at.
Okay, so that is the bass from Glitch, from Dash Glitch. And here's mine, and it'll be a little different because I'm in a different key, a little bit faster. It was just for a track I was working on recently, or for a superluminal track. But anyways, you can hear what it sounds like. Okay. So, quite similar, and I'll just walk you guys through what is happening and what we're doing here. Okay, so the first thing to show is that we are using one oscillator. We've turned it into an upward ramp by just drawing it in here. And then with the phase and down, these all down to 0. We've got the envelope, which is controlling the, which is defaults to controlling the amplitude. And so we've just got the release here set under where it will click, but we're not using the decay or anything really here, just the sustain completely open. So now this is the thing that Dash's video did such a good job of explaining, which is that these LFOs can be used in envelope mode, which you can then sync to the frequency. I mean you could go to the tempo, right? And so we have these at 1/16, and so for example, this is now being run to the cutoff filter here. The level of the first filter, not the cutoff, sorry. And so we can really draw in our shape to sound exactly the way that we want, and before the next note will start. But then the real trick thing here is using these two envelope LFOs as envelopes to both control the filter. And this is a thing that I didn't really like about it, was the filter just using one, using an envelope like I normally do with the decay. Just didn't get it. So this is a very cool trick. Even one didn't quite do it, but you can mix two together. So it's great. And everybody, if you want more on this, please go watch Dash's video. It gives a big, I have the link below in the description, and he does a great job of it. So I'm not going to go too in depth on that. I'm just going to then move on from this. And so then the next thing that we want to show is that he described how you could have, you can remove the fundamentals, right? And so instead of using a side chain, you have one that is, so he basically did this on one channel in Bitwig, and again, watch the video and you'll see what I'm talking about. I use Cubase, so we have to do it a little bit differently, but it's not that much different. Basically what I've done is just duplicated my channel, and this one saying have no fundamental, right? And so then I have the third and fourth 16th notes of a bar of the beat as the full one, and then just the first of the 3 16th note bass notes is on the one with the no fundamental. So now if I open up just these Pro Q3s, and you can see this one is the full one with the fundamental, and this one doesn't have it. And so you can exactly see what's happening here. And the rest of it all stays the same. And so this allows us to, deal with the overlap between the kick and the bass, because I have an eighth note kick that's sloping down a little bit, but we need, with a fade out, but we still need to deal with that overlap. And so by removing the first fundamental, and even a little bit of this first, the fundamental and a little bit of the first harmonic, we're able to really deal with that. And you see there's still a little bit of a spike here because what we can also do is adjust the volume independently. So now that I have its own channel, we can just bring this in. So if I pull it down a lot, you get the gallop feel, right? And now we can bring it in to where we want it to be. And so this is the first step. This is basically where Dash left it at the end of his video. Oops, that should be negative 7.5. So this is where Dash left it at the end of his video. And it sounds good, but a lot of what really takes a bass line into that really professional quality that's going to just blast all the big dance floors is not just is yes, having a very clean, simple stuff inside the synth. So like our Vital, again, we're not adding, there's no effects, no distortion, things like that in here, no compression. It's just saw and then in envelopes on the filter and the and the volume, and that's it, right? And that's what we want to keep it real nice and clean. And then also we don't need to a lot of times use things like have a high pass filter, which can cause some issues because you've just got a really clean starting point. But still, there's more that needs to be done. So from here, I want to build on what Dash has done in his video and show you guys what I do after this, right? So the first thing I'm going to show you on, we'll be changing on the main one, and then I'll add into the fundamental afterwards, right? So I'm going to close this, close these guys down. So we've got our ocular scope here. I've got it on the kick and bass bus channel, so you can see together how it's going to change. And so already, right, we do see, and you see it's very, it's a perfect saw, right? It's super clean. But what we can do, and what I really like to do, is, okay, so there's of course many different ways to bake a cake and to make a bass line. And so these are not necessarily the ways, but these are tried and true techniques that I've used, and other people I know do similar variations on this, right? And so the first thing that's going to be very important, right, to really tweaking our bass is going to be using some sort of multiband distortion, right? So right now I'm using, this is in Cubase, so I have Quadrafuzz V2. I know some people love the old version, but this one is great too. I've also got a FabFilter Saturn here for a different kind of effect. This one's on clean tube, these are on tape, and we'll see how it changes this, right? So the first thing, let's just go ahead and play it. And now I'm gonna take off the bypass. So you see what has happened here, right? Look at the form, the waveform. It goes from this very clean saw to now having some little funkiness going on, and it sounds in a way that I really like and I think really works well. You get an extra bit of meat and a lot of grit to it, a little bit more power. And one of the key things that you want to do here, though, is what's important about this is I'm not even putting the drive up here on any of them, right? And they're all just at 0. The key thing about this is not even really adding the distortion, it's the multiband. By breaking the bass into different bands like this, it changes the shape of the waveform. And if I move this bar here to change this, so let's do it right now. Look at what's happening. I'm pointing at the screen, you can't see, but look at what's happening in those last two notes there, because these are the only ones I'm changing at the moment, right? So you see how it's changing a lot, so we can really tune the type of sound that what we want. So I'm going to go back to where I had it at 61, where it's right in between the fundamental and the first harmonic. So everything from the first harmonic up is in this middle one. Okay? And so and then these higher ones, you can put, I usually will use a note frequency chart and find so I know which key I'm in, and get them roughly between the different harmonics. And of course, it's more important down here where there's a lot more space between frequencies. Up here, as everything becomes condensed, then and it's also the bass is most of the content is down here. So it's really these two that we want. This one a bit, but you can just season these to taste, right? But this is the key one here that you really want to dial in where you put in the placement of it. So now let me just show you if I mute this one and I show you with a Fab Filter Saturn instead. Let me just put this back to 0 here. Okay, so now we're going to use Fab Filter, and let's see what happens here. So again, you see it goes from the straight ramp to squiggly guy. And this sounds different here because, again, I have my cutoffs in different places. And again, let me just show you what happens if you move them. You see how it's changing, so you can really dial this in. And then here, a lot of times I'll put a little bit of drive, a little bit, on this one, but not on that one. Don't have to, though. And again, it's not actually the drive that changes it, it's the bands, right? So you see how this isn't really doing that much because it's a little fatter, right? But the completely changing the whole waveform is this. So, and then sometimes I'll use both. So now let's try using 2. Okay, now we're getting a little of the woompa 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 in here, because a lot of times what I like to do is have one and not have 2 that have 4 bands. So maybe get rid of, say, this band. And so we just have 3, sorry. And that way, you have a little bit more variety between just, and you change it. And so I'd have to dial this in a bit more, but you see we can get a completely different feel, right? And, we can play with moving this around. We could put it somewhere like this. Let me just check on the speakers real quick. Yeah, see, that sounds pretty nice right there. So again, you can do a lot to change the character of the bass with multiband distortion. And so this, ultimately, you can take a bass from any synth, anything, any soft synth, whatever it is, as long as you can get nice tight envelopes so you can really get that clean shape that you want. And then you throw on some multiband distortions and, move the cutoff points between them to dial in the character that you want. So now I'm just going to keep going with just the quadrifuzz for a minute. So we'll leave that. And now I want to show you 2 other things that I like to do on the bass. So let me open up the Pro Q3 so you can see again what's happening with the waveform. So if we look at the waveform of the bass up here, we've got this, it's just kind of going straight down on a straight angle here, right? If I hold in here, you'll see, right? Okay, so it's just cruising straight on down there. And what can really help sometimes is to cut out, not cut, but just scoop a little bit out of some of these harmonics, right? And so there's 2 places that I find are important. So one of them we can do right here on the Pro Q. Just use a normal parametric to get rid of that second harmonic. So it'll be the 3rd bump, you see? That's the fundamental, 1st harmonic, 2nd harmonic, right? So we're just carving this out a little bit. And now if we mute this off, you can hear. Subtle, but it definitely makes a difference, right? And now the other thing that I like to do is to scoop out a little bit more of the mid-range, low mid-range, up here in the 400 to 500, 400 something around there. And here, so let's just look at it. It's this area. These guys, right? So this is what's starting to scoop out now because I turned it on. This area up here, right? I want to dip here a little bit. Now, I could just do it with a parametric EQ, but the problem is that as we get into here, there are, as the harmonics get closer together, it's easier. Parametrics whatever frequency you're cutting, you're also influencing the frequencies next to it. So what I found is something that works a bit better for me is to use this something like this is an analog modeling EQ from it's called Stillwell 1973. And so this, if we turn it on, I just have on this middle band here, I put it the lowest one at 360. And now you can, if we just go, you'll see, now if I put this up, let me undo it. Look, it's this frequencies that I'm talking about. You hear that whoop, whoop, ringy, like a little frog? So we don't want that. So I just pull it out a little bit, right? So you get a little dip here. And then we're getting a little bit of a dip on the second harmonic. And I find that this makes a much cleaner sound, right? And so the only other thing that I sometimes like to use, and also notice we don't even have a roll-off here. You know, we don't have a high pass here, which is nice because a high pass, then we would need to use zero. We would either have a resonant peak where we're doing it in zero latency, or we do linear phase, but then there's pre-ringing issues. So if we don't have to use it, better. And another way that you can deal with if you have too much bass, right, without using a parametric, is you can adjust the gain of different bands, right? So we can, and you can see what's changing here. So we can do a little bit there by doing it like that. And same thing, I do this sometimes. A lot of times when I'm using the Saturn, I'll do that because I find that the Saturn also you can dial in the tone on each, like a EQ curve on each one. So a lot of times I'll put this band down a bit because it gets pretty juicy. And so this is just a good way to also, you see, you can just bring down that bottom there. So this is another thing you can do to adjust the various levels, of the bass without having to use a high pass. So let's go back here. And then one other thing I'll show you that I sometimes use is Little Lab's Voice of God. And there's one I think called, somebody told me, there's a freeware version of this that doesn't have to be UAD. But this is something like people use R-Bass or Max Bass and stuff, which is basically, this will make a resonant peak, but it just blends it in a way that is a lot smoother. And I just feel that it doesn't muddy up the sound unless you put it on a low frequency and smash the amplitude up. Then it's definitely going to be muddy. But if you dial it in right, you can find the frequency that you want to boost. You can give it a little touch, and it can just add a little bit more meat. But again, this is one of those things, is less is more, subtle. You see I have the amplitude on 1 here, right? So I'm not doing that much because, again, you can overdo it pretty easily. So now let me just turn on the because I wanted to, you also see that this spike is still happening here. It's now what happens when I turn on the quadrifuzz, boom. So when I dialed in that point, let's look here again, I have it at 61. You see how it's changing now, this first one, right? Oops, I just changed this. Oh, it's okay, so it's still at 61. Anyways, but you see how that is also fixing our spiky guy. So we don't have this summing causing a big spike, right? So that's another thing that you can use the multiband distortions for, is to deal with some of the ways that it overlaps, right? So now if I just turn on the other things here, and I think my Pro Q3, I also want to just put this back on, okay? So this is, yeah, now let's see, we've got everything on here. Yeah, so okay, so now let's hear it. This is the way that sounds with all of the, with the multiband distortions on, right? And now if I turn them off, right? So still good, right? But super, super clean. And then now, once we add our stuff in, boom, we get this just pump and feel, you know? And also, you know, something that's great about having such a clean, nice starting point and doing all of this stuff after, not doing it inside the synth, is that then we have this nice clean thing that we can make a ton of different styles of bass line using, you know, we could potentially change just a little bit of the envelope in Vital, You know, we could make it a little tighter if we want. If we wanted this, you know, we could bring it down. So we could change these things a little bit to get a little bit different characteristic. And then we can use different combinations, different types. I mean, if I change this from tape to tube, here we go. If I change this from tape to tube, you get a different sound, you know, and so you can really experiment. And as I said here, let's put it back on the second one. So now we have 2, right? I think I would dial in the 2 a little bit more if I was going to do it. And I'm really kind of liking just this quadrifuzz right now. But, right, so you can really make a wide variety of bass lines just by, you know, doing these processes afterwards. And you can turn a nice, clean, straight, you know, tight bass line coming straight out of your soft synth, whether it's Vital like in this one or Serum or whatever you want to use, and then apply these processes afterwards. I usually just have a chain of these plugins that I leave here. And so if I want, I can just throw them all on and then just, you know, tune them, adjust them to taste. But that way I don't have to click every single time. I just say this is my bass chain, and then I adjust each time as needed. So that is basically all I wanted to show you today. In props and shout out to Dash for making that video and helping me to get over my get over the reasons I wasn't using Vital to make bass, and you know, and then make something I think that's pretty killer. Definitely going to be using this, and we're probably going to be making we're making a preset pack, and I'm definitely going to use this Vital now to make a bunch of bass presets. So those will come out later. And so just want to say thanks, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and also check out a Patreon. That's something that helps me to be able to make these videos. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time.